Picture this, Sunday morning, long ride, cafe stop is 2 hours away. You're in zone 2, chatting, soft pedaling up the drags, your heart rate is low, the effort is low. Right now, you're enjoying life, and a significant proportion of the energy powering this ride is coming from fat. Ride in the fat burning zone. You've heard it. Maybe someone said it to you. Maybe you've seen it on the display of a gym bike right there between cardio zone and peak zone, like it's a special setting you select. And there is truth in it. At lower intensities, you do burn proportionally more fat. That's physiology. It's measurable. But the way it's usually talked about, as though there's a magic intensity where fat melts away, and that misses the point. Fat oxidation isn't a zone, it's a pathway, and it's a slower, more complex pathway than carbohydrate, with its own bottlenecks and its own reasons for falling away when the intensity goes up. To understand why you burn more fat on a long, easy ride and almost none during a sprint, you need to understand how fat gets into the same system from last time, the Krebs cycle, the electron transport chain. Same machinery, different front door. So let's start with why your body stores so much fat in the first place. Fat is energy dense, 9 kilocalories per gram compared to 4 for carbohydrate per gram. More than twice the energy, and the reason goes back to something from last time. Hydrogens. Triglycerides are hydrogen rich, and the hydrogens are where the energy is. More hydrogens means more electrons to load onto NADH and FADH2, more loaded carriers, more trips through the electron transport chain, and more ATP. So per gram, fat is the more efficient molecule to store in bulk, which is why even the lean cyclist carries tens of thousands of calories in fat reserves. You'd never run out on a ride. But energy density and energy availability aren't the same thing. Yes, fat has more energy per gram. It just can't give it to you as fast. Fat oxidation maxes out at around 110 kilojoules per minute. Glycolysis delivers 200, phosphagen system 400. Fat is the long game. On that Sunday, the demand is low. Fat can keep up, but the moment someone attacks on a climb and you need to respond, your body swings to glycolysis because fat can't produce ATP fast enough. The pathway is slower, not worse, slower. So how does fat actually get from storage to the Krebs cycle? Fats are stored as triglycerides in muscle cells and in fat cells. One glycerol molecule bonded to 3 fatty acids. It's stable, it's compact, but it can't be used as it is. It needs to be broken apart first. That breaking apart is lipolysis. The enzyme is hormone-sensitive lipase. It splits the triglyceride into glycerol, and 3 fatty acids. Those fatty acids enter the blood and travel to the muscle. Fatty acids stored inside the muscle at intramuscular triglycerides don't need transporting, they're already there. But getting the fatty acid to the muscle is just the beginning, because once it arrives, it needs to get inside the mitochondria. And that's where the energy extraction happens. And this is where the first bottleneck is. The fatty acid combines with coenzyme A to form fatty acyl-CoA. It costs 2 ATP though. You're spending energy to unlock energy. Now, fatty acyl-CoA is too big to cross the mitochondrial membrane on its own. It needs a carrier protein called carnitine and an enzyme called carnitine acyltransferase to shuttle it across, the carnitine shuttle. And carnitine acyltransferase is the rate-limiting step for the entire fat oxidation pathway. I'll say that again, the speed at which carnitine acyltransferase can move fatty acyl-CoA across the mitochondrial membrane determines how fast you can burn through fat. No matter how much fat is available in your blood, in your muscles, sitting in adipose tissue, if this enzyme can't shuttle it in fast enough, the rate is capped. The carnitine shuttle has a speed limit, and that speed limit is one of the main reasons fat can't keep up at high intensities. The bottleneck is the thing that matters. Same principle, different pathway. So the fatty acyl-CoA has made it across inside the mitochondria. Now what? This is where it connects back to the last time, because the destination is the same, the Krebs cycle, the electron transport chain. Fat is just arriving through a different door. Beta oxidation is the process of preparing fat for that system. It chops up the fatty acid chain, 2 carbons at a time. Each chop produces one acetyl-CoA, the same molecule that carbohydrates send through pyruvate dehydrogenase, plus one NADH and one FADH2, loaded delivery vans, same currency as the Krebs cycle produces. A typical fatty acid is 16 or 18 carbons long, so you get 7 or 8 rounds of chopping, 7 or 8 acetyl-CoA molecules, each entering the Krebs cycle, each generating its own set of NADH and FADH2 for the electron transport chain. The total ATP yield from one fat molecule is enormous, far more than glucose, more carbons, more hydrogens, more electrons, more trips through the chain. That's the payoff for all those extra steps. But it costs more oxygen per ATP produced, and it's slower, which is the other reason fat drops away at high intensity. Not just the carnitine shuttle speed limit, the oxygen cost per unit of energy is higher. Now here's the bit I find most elegant about the whole energy system story, and it connects the two fuels in a way I don't think gets talked about enough. Carnitine acetyltransferase, the bottleneck enzyme for the carnitine shuttle, is accelerated by acetyl-CoA abundance. And where does acetyl-CoA come from? The Krebs cycle, fed by glycolysis. So energy from carbohydrate breakdown actually helps fat oxidation work more efficiently. Glycolysis produces acetyl-CoA. That speeds up the carnitine shuttle. The shuttle moves more fat into the mitochondria. Carbohydrates facilitates the pathway that burns fat. The two fuels aren't in competition, they are cooperating. And regular endurance training makes the whole system better. It's more efficient carnitine shuttle, better beta oxidation capacity, and a trained rider burning more fat at the same intensity is sparing glycogen, saving the carbohydrate for later, for the climb, for the sprint, for the town sign, for the bit that actually matters. Fat adaptation isn't about burning more fat for its own sake, it's about saving carbs. So you are always burning both fat and carbohydrate, always. The question is proportion, and the proportion changes with intensity. At low intensity, fat provides a larger share. As the intensity goes up, the balance tips towards carbohydrate. At some point, carbohydrate becomes the dominant fuel. That is the crossover point. Your Sunday ride, zone 2, fat is doing a lot of the work, but now we've got that climb back into town and someone attacks. You respond, your heart rate jumps up, the power goes up. Inside your muscles, the fuel mix swings, more glycolysis, more carbohydrate, less fat because the carbohydrate pathway is faster and the demand just increased. That crossover is happening in real time during every change in pace. And the crossover point varies between people. Training shifts it higher. A trained athlete oxidizes more fat at a given intensity than an untrained one. More mitochondria, more enzymes, more efficient carnitine shuttle. They can rely on fat for longer before the balance tips. Diet does something similar. Low carbohydrate diets can shift the crossover point to a higher intensity. The body adapts to rely on fat across a wider range, but there's a ceiling. No matter how fat adapted you are, at higher intensity, carbohydrate dominates. Fat oxidation maxes out 110 kilojoules per minute when demand exceeds that, glycolysis takes over. Now it's not a failure of adaptation, it's physics and biology. The pathway is slower. We don't have to guess any of this. We can measure it. Respiratory exchange ratio, RER. You put a rider on the bike with a gas analyzer, you measure the oxygen consumed and the CO2 produced, and you calculate the ratio. An RER of 0.7 means almost entirely fat. An RER of 1 means almost entirely carbohydrate. Most exercises sit somewhere in between. The reason it works is because fat and carbohydrates have different chemical structures, different oxygen requirements, different CO2 production. The ratio tells you the fuel mix. At rest, RER is around 0.7 to 0.8, mostly fat. As you ride harder, it climbs towards 1. And above 1, you're producing excess CO2 from buffering hydrogen ions. You're above threshold. On your Sunday Zone 2 ride, RER might be 0.75 to 0.8. During a 25-mile time trial, it's closer to 1. In a sprint, it is above 1. It's not theory. You can book in, sit in a lab and watch the crossover happen on the screen. If your coach does metabolic testing, this is one of the things they're looking at. Where does your crossover sit? Has training shifted it one way? Now, there is one more fuel source, and this one surprises people. Protein. your body can use it for energy. It doesn't want to, it will prefer carbohydrate and fat, but it can. The process is deamination. You remove nitrogen from amino acids, the remaining carbon skeleton enters the Krebs cycle. It's the same destination, again, different starting material. Under normal conditions, protein contributes very little. During a 1 hour ride, it's maybe 2 to 5%. But once you start going over 3 to 4 hours, it moves up to about 10%. Now think about that long sporty 4 or 5 hours. By the back end, a meaningful fraction of your energy is coming from protein oxidation. Your body is breaking down amino acids for fuel. Now add in a few days of riding. Over a course of a week, that is a lot of protein being broken down. So what accelerates it? Decreased glycogen availability. When carbohydrate runs low, protein oxidation goes up. The less glycogen you have, the more your body leans on protein. And this connects to fueling. If you keep glycogen available by eating on the bike, you suppress protein oxidation. The carbohydrate protects the protein, the same way carbohydrate facilitates fat oxidation through the carnitine shuttle. Everything connects. Endurance athletes need more protein than most people think, not because they're wanting to get massive muscles and they're, looking well swole, but because they're burning protein as fuel. On long rides, it needs replacing. So we've done 3 episodes, 3 systems, and it's one picture. Your body stores 3 seconds of ATP. Everything beyond that is production to order. Phosphagen system, fastest, 400 kilojoules per minute. It's gone in 15 seconds. PCR donates phosphate ADP, one enzyme, almost instant. Reloaded aerobically. Your sprint launch, your jump out of the corner. Anaerobic glycolysis, 200 kilojoules per minute. Glycogen to pyruvate to lactate is rate limited by phosphate fructokinase. Your kilo, your bridge up to a break. Aerobic glycolysis, same starting point, different direction. Pyruvate through the gate into the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. 125 kilojoules per minute, 32 ATP per glucose. It's rate limited by citrate synthase, isocitrate dehydrogenase, cytochrome C oxidase, and ultimately oxygen. Your time trial, your threshold. Fat oxidation, same Krebs cycle, different front door. Triglycerides broken down. Free fatty acids shuttled in by carnitine acyltransferase. Beta oxidation, 110 kilojoules per minute. It's enormous. Such a big yield per molecule, but it's rate limited by the carnitine shuttle. That's your zone 2. That's your long endurance ride. And protein picks up the slack when carbohydrate runs low. 2 to 5% during 1 hour, maybe up to 10 to 12% at hour 3 and 4. All running simultaneously. The mix shifting with every change in pace, every attack, every recovery, and every hill. The fat burning zone. Real? Yes, absolutely. At lower intensities, you burn proportionally more fat, but thinking of it as a zone misses the point. It's not a place you go to lose weight. It's a description of what your body does at low intensity. And the best way to improve fat oxidation isn't to sit in zone 2 forever, it's to train your aerobic system. Build mitochondrial density, increase enzyme concentrations, improve the carnitine shuttle, push the crossover point higher. A well-trained rider burns more fat at the same intensity, sparing that glycogen, delaying the point where carbohydrates become the only option, has more fuel in the tank for the finish. Your body's fuel system isn't a switch, it's a mixing desk. Every ride, every effort, every change in pace, the levels shift. Training changes the range on every channel. And every bottleneck we've talked about across these 3 episodes is specific, measurable, and trainable. The bottleneck is the thing that matters, and the bottleneck is trainable. Now, next time, I've got something a little bit different. We've talked about what powers the effort, but we haven't talked about what stops it, why your legs seize up in a hard pursuit, what hydrogen ions actually do, and what your body does to fight back. That's acid-base balance. And it turns out there are things you can train and there are things you can take that shift the balance in your favour. Saddleupcycling.co.uk if you want to get in touch with me. Saddle up, and remember, the fat burning zone is real, it's just zone 2, which you were going to do anyway. Alright, see ya, cheers.